Live. It's just after 8 o'clock. What day have we got? It's the 2nd of November. How are you doing, people? Welcome to the Sports Therapy Association podcast. My name is Matt Phillips, creator of Run Chat Live, and this is the Sports Therapy Association podcast, recorded live every Tuesday at 8 o'clock, and you can join us. We stream onto the Sports Therapy Association Facebook page and also the Sports Therapy Association YouTube channel. If you do want to join us live, but if you're watching the podcast, and that's great as well, thank you very much for your support. If you get a chance, leave a rating on particularly Apple Podcasts. Just leave, I don't know, if you need some help, 5 stars would be great, and some just really nice kind of descriptive thankful words would be lovely. It just helps us appear high in the Google rankings, which means that the great words of our guests reach more people. It's not like a money generating thing. It just helps us get out there. So thanks for everyone who's joining us live. Before we kick into tonight's episode, which I'm so excited about, it's been such a weird week of different emotions listening to some of the topics and experiences of our subject matter tonight, which is safety in practice. Before I do that, I just want to thank last week's guests from the Massage Collective, who most people know them already. We were joined by Anna Maria Mazzieri and Matt Scarsbrook. Sadly, Becky couldn't join us. She was on a train to a field somewhere. So maybe next time, Becky. But yeah, it was a great episode. It's available now to listen on podcast. Just type in Sports Therapy Association and follow us, obviously. And you'll be able to listen to this great discussion we had about how the sports massage industry has changed over the year with relation to becoming a bit more evidence informed, and looking at Therapy Expo coming up and looking at the future next year and how we continue to kind of raise the stakes with regards to our place in kind of healthcare, working with other professionals. So it's a really good episode. As always, the guys in the Massage Collective do a great job with some great references. So I encourage you to listen to that. So yeah, there we go. So tonight's episode, safety in practice. We're talking about safety for sports massage therapists. Obviously, it's something which can affect everybody and can and does affect everyone regardless of gender. But tonight, for this episode in particular, we're going to focus on female sports massage therapists and safety for them. At a later date, we will address safety for all massage therapists, which can incorporate other genders and other people. And also, we're going to have a live one with some specialists as well. I've got in touch, or thankfully, I've been put in touch with some specialists who are going to come on, and they will have listened to the show tonight, and they will be able to share some advice and wisdom from and research and studies and that sort of thing. So it's going to be really interesting, and it all starts with the fantastic 10 therapists, female therapists, who are going to be joining us tonight in 4 stages, because I can only have 3 people with me up on the software. But I think that's quite cool, because if we had 10 people discussing stuff together, it would get a bit hectic. So every quarter of an hour, we're going to have a little change where the people on screen will change and another 3 people will come up. In theory, that's how it is on my crib sheet. Whether it works out that way, we'll see. If you are joining us live, I can see people are still already filling up in the YouTube stream and also in Facebook stream. Anything you do ask can appear up here. For example, Glenn Murphy, thanks for joining us. Okay, we are here. You can start now. Ha ha. Thank you, Glenn. We were waiting for you, obviously. And we've already got some of the people who are going to be coming up speaking in the chat room as well. So Anne Cochrane is here, Sharon Headley is here, Becky Carroll has joined us, and the room is filling up with other people as well. Danielle Chana here. It's going to be great. Okay, right. So I'm going to try, now I've done this introduction, to basically stand back, and I'm the timekeeper. I'll be swapping people over, asking a few questions which people have been kind enough to ask in the STA members page this week. So apart from that, I'm going to leave it to the people on the screen. So we will bring up the first 3 sports and massage therapists for this section of the show in no particular order. Let's bring up Heather Venables and Catherine Reimer and Becky Carroll. So far, so good. Hey, people. How you doing?
Yeah, good evening.
Good, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, and also not just for tonight, for the kind of discussions which have been going on behind the scenes. I've been really moved by it. I think I used the expression "welling up" and tried to delete that, and I couldn't. So it's probably showing a bit too much, but it's been really very emotional. I'm sure for you guys as well, sharing and talking and advising, and it's been quite incredible. One thing I do want to say before we kick off is if anybody, we will be giving out an email address at the end of the show. If anybody is affected by the subject matter tonight, you may well be affected in strange ways, which you didn't think you were going to be. And also be careful about little ears listening. There might be some of the topic matter which may be unsuitable for all audiences. But yeah, just to repeat, we will be giving an email out later at the end if you have been affected by the content tonight. But before we do that, maybe I'm just going to hand over to you guys and introduce yourselves. Maybe briefly just say your name and where you're based and what you do. And then we'll start, once you three have introduced yourselves, we'll just start with why are we here? Why have we got this episode? And that's for you guys to discuss. So in no particular order, just fire away, introduce yourselves.
Okay, so I'm Heather Venables. I'm a soft tissue therapist, and I have a practice here in Poole in Cornwall.
Don't make me talk. I want no male voice for 10 minutes. Go for it.
Hi, I'm Becky Carroll. I am the SDA rep for the South West, and I am based in Tewkesbury, North Gloucestershire.
And I'm Catherine Reimer. I usually see me commenting below, but I'm actually here tonight. I'm usually one of the West Yorkshire STA regional reps, and I'm based near Garforth in West Yorkshire as a sports massage therapist.
Fantastic. Right. So question I've got here, first of all, as a brief introduction is why do we need this episode? What, talk amongst yourselves. Why are we here? Why is there a need to do this?
I was talking with Catherine and Emma recently about this topic, and it became terrifyingly obvious that it's a common occurrence and it's something that needs to be addressed. The more therapists you talk to, the more experiences they've got of this situation. I for one, thought I was in the minority, and it turns out that I'm very much in the majority, which is just awful. And I think if we can kind of give advice or guidance to younger female therapists, or not even younger, but new therapists coming through, on how to minimize certain risks, and that would be a great thing.
And I think, as much as you realize that this kind of thing happens every now and then, you don't think it's ever going to happen to you. So it may not be something as a therapist that you've really thought through how you're going to respond to it when it does happen, particularly because it's not necessarily something that's covered in depth when you're training to be a therapist. But it is something that if you are prepared to handle because you've thought about what could possibly happen, it'll make it easier when it does happen. Not that means that it should happen, because it shouldn't. But we have to face the reality that it will happen at times, and we need to make sure that we're prepared on how we're going to handle it.
Yeah, I think it's an unfortunate situation that we've had to even make this a podcast and actually be able to talk about it, and the amount of people that even through the week we've chatted about how much it's affected everyone, and even why it's such a broad subject still, even in this day and age.
What's really staggered me is that you'll hear it time and time again by different people saying that they're thankful and they're lucky that it's only happened a handful of times, or it's been a mild experience, and you think it shouldn't be that you're thankful that it's only been a mild occurrence. It shouldn't happen at all. Shouldn't happen. And actually, when I started thinking about my own experiences, I thought I've only had a few, and I start thinking through, it's actually that one and that one and that one and that one, and it's just not acceptable. It's just not.
No, and I'm obviously going to talk about what happened to me in a little bit, but when I started thinking about it and reflecting on what happened, I started wondering, well, why? Why do people think it's acceptable to behave in that way when they come into clinic? And then it made me think about, during COVID, when we went into lockdowns, sports massage therapists and sports therapists were lumped in by the government into massage parlors. So is there this perception in society that when you go for a treatment, it's okay to ask for a little extra if you fancy it? Well, no, that's not what we're there for. We're trained professionals who are providing a service to help people, but it doesn't mean that we're interested in that kind of service or that type of treatment. And we should be viewed and recognized as professionals, but I think sometimes we aren't always viewed that way in society. And that was reflected in the way that we were treated during the lockdowns, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because I think it was really brought home, wasn't it, that during lockdown, even within our own industry, we were going, well, where do we fit into it all? Like, are we medical? Are we not medical? You know, so if we don't even know necessarily what the boundaries are as such, then how are other people meant to know? It's a good point.
And it was also looking at like past traumas as well. Like, are we affected by certain traumas in our past that will reflect maybe on future? Is where I maybe feel nervous or have a gut feeling around certain male clients, is that because of something that's happened in my past that makes me feel that way? Am I reflecting badly on a male client, even though he's done nothing wrong, or maybe he has? I wouldn't know. And then that's because something that's happened in my past that's made me that way.
It's a great point. We'll touch on that later on, just to give people, because we've all been in a week, I mean, talking about this, and it's been shocking, and it's changed, you know, already my awareness of how severe this problem is. But to give people who are listening who aren't quite sure about the severity of it, you've all got experiences. But Heather, would you be so kind as to kind of share your experience to show what does happen?
Yeah, so in July, I went to work one day and I got a phone call from someone asking for a treatment. It was a man. He told me that he was a Marine on deployment in Cornwall. And I thought, okay, fair enough. He had a couple of days leave, and he was desperate for treatment because he said he was a Marine diver and his legs were aching. All sounded very, very positive. I didn't have any openings, so I told him that I couldn't actually see him on the day that he wanted to come in. But he said to me, and this is where I started having a few red flags, but I thought he might have just been joking. He offered me £4,000 if I canceled every single client and told him that I had COVID. And I said, no, that's completely unethical. That's not happening. And he said, oh, I knew I would like you. Plus you're American. You know, that's really great because I like Americans. And I thought, okay, very odd, but all right. You know, maybe he's just joking. Well, that day I had a cancellation come through. So I rang him back and said, look, I've had a cancellation. If you want to come, you're welcome to come. When he got there, I can only tell you that it was the most terrifying experience I've ever had. He got lost on the way. Most people can't find the clinic. That's a normal thing that happens because of where it's tucked in. So I went out to the road to try and direct him in. And he was very aggressive in the language, swearing at other drivers on the road and really quite agitated. And I thought, oh, this isn't, you know, a good start to the appointment. When he finally managed to get into the clinic, he was very erratic in his behavior. It was very clear that he glorified violence and was talking about very violent things. He claimed to be a Marine, but it became very evident that he wasn't actually a Marine. He wouldn't disclose an address to me because he said he was a Marine and it was all classified, which I thought was really odd. He then just started talking about all these violent things that he had done. And maybe he was a Marine in the past, but it sounded more like movie plots than actual things that he had done. But he was talking about killing people and that kind of thing, which was actually really quite frightening. And at that point, I was thinking, how do I get him out? At which point, he then became actually sexually aggressive in his language towards me, wanting to show me what he called his pistol. Which I said, no, thank you, and tried to get him out. But because he was so violent in his language and so erratic in his behavior, I didn't feel like I could actually tell him very firmly that he had to leave. I felt like it was a very delicate situation. And if I had actually stood up to him in the way that I wanted to, he probably would have done something. So I had to handle it very carefully to get him out the door, and I couldn't get him out the door. It took a very long time to get him out the door. When he finally left, he then stayed in the car park for 2 hours while I hid in the back of the clinic, waiting for him to leave as he kept trying to get back into the clinic. In the end, the osteopath who is part of the clinic, had to escort me to the car just in case he happened to still be around. And I left. He was told he was banned from coming back to the clinic, but then he continued to message me. He started ringing me late at night. And he even showed up at the clinic uninvited, and really frightened one of the clients who was waiting in the car park. Now, I had reported it to the police, but by the time they got back to me, it was a week after the initial event, and they have classed it as stalking and harassment. They gave me all kinds of guidelines on how to keep myself safe, and my whole life changed overnight because they classed it as such a high threat. So I wasn't allowed to go for walks by myself. I wasn't allowed to take myself to work. My husband had to drop me off, pick me up. They told me to change my car. We had to as a clinic, we had to completely change our staffing rota and schedules to make sure that I wasn't alone. And if I was alone, I had to have my husband drop me off and pick me up. I couldn't have access to my own vehicle. It was quite frightening what happened and how quickly my life changed. About a month later, they told me that he was arrested, and I felt like I finally had a bit of a reprieve, like my life could go back. But he was arrested on other charges, and I was told he didn't have capacity for the charges that were from my case. And about a month later, he was released from prison back into the local community, and I'm back under those same restrictions that I was on previously because he is still classed as a threat to me, and I'm still waiting for the police to who have reopened the case to take care of things and get the restraining order in place for my own protection. And this has been going on since July, so it's been a few months now, and it's still not over. And I'm still having to be very careful with what I do, just because I happened to go to work, and someone came to see me who decided that he was going to do something completely inappropriate. And all I did was show up to work. There was nothing that I did to invite this, and it just is something that has happened. And now I have to live with the consequences of that.
Sounds like something out of a film, and an isolated incident of kind of some wacko who's you are in the wrong place at the wrong time. But as we proceed with the show and we get to hear from the other people, that will become all too evident that it's not. But Catherine and Becky, I'm sure it doesn't sound like as much of a one-off incident to you guys as it might do to some of the listeners. Can you relate to what's happened? And
yeah, one of my experiences was I had a chap contact me who I've not seen before, and he contacted me with a groin injury, which now I know is a red flag from my experience. So he came in for treatment. We went through the subjective assessment, and I turned around to put my computer down on the side, and as I turned around, he was stood there, stark naked, proud as punch, and my reaction was to just throw a towel at him, which then I remember after that appointment, I remember feeling bad that I threw a towel at him. That was what was left with me. I was feeling bad that I did that. But anyway, as I thought, I was quite green. I was new. I'd not long come out of university, so I thought he's not going to get underneath my skin. I'm going to be very professional. But as the appointment went on, he was saying things that were inappropriate. He was trying to touch me as I was moving around the couch. And at the end of the session, he asked me whether it was okay for him to stretch. And I was like, well, yeah, you do what you need to do. But obviously he's naked, and he's doing downward dog and all sorts of, just trying to make me uncomfortable. I thought, you're not going to win. And I was very aware at the time. And I remember saying to him, look, I'm really sorry, but, I've got another client coming in. He refused to get dressed, and he blocked my way to the door, which just terrified me. But thankfully, Chris, who ran the gym that I was working in at the time, he knocked on my door and he just shouted through the door and said, your next client's here, which, I don't know, just put the fear into him, I suppose. He got dressed and he left. And I viewed that as an escape, thankfully. But then on a few social situations, he was appearing. I've never seen this guy before. And on this one occasion, I was in the pub, and my friend said, "Oh, there's this guy that looked really looking weird through the window." I looked up, and it was him, and he was just stood there at the window, just staring right at me. Thankfully, one of my friends who was with me at the time was a male police officer, and he went and had a chat with this guy. And touch wood, he's not darkened my doorstep since. So nowhere near as bad as Heather's experience, but one that has stayed with me. And even now, like I said earlier, the one thing that I remember feeling is I shouldn't have thrown a towel at him.
And yet you shouldn't feel guilty about that at all, because that's the most natural reaction. Cover it up. That is not what you're here for. And
I mean, I even tried to make light of it and said, "Look, I need somewhere to stick the towel in," and then that was the worst thing to say, because obviously he made a comment about, well, I know where I can stick it, type of thing, and it's just awful.
It's interesting. It's something I want to touch on with the other therapists who come up, and I remember you saying it, Becky, in the chat before, how people do try and make light of it. I wonder if that is a defense mechanism or something, or whether it's like trying to downplay it, because I'm not going to make suggestions. I want to hear some other therapists saying why that seems to happen so long. People who have been victims in these circumstances kind of turn into a bit of a joke, and kind of like, I don't know, maybe it's a defense mechanism. Catherine, you sitting there and listening to these two, can you relate to it? Does it sound as shocking as it might do for some? Or you like, this crap happens?
Well, sometimes you think that maybe you're remembering a situation differently to how it was, and that's why you might make light of it. Mine are more personal situations, so mine are more outside of before, because I've only been doing this for over 2.5 years now. I've had mine kind of stopped at screening level, so I didn't actually meet this person, but they text me asking for an undraped massage. I'd never heard of this. I thought this was a new technique. I was very naive. I'd not heard of that before. I actually had to ask someone, what's an undraped massage? I thought, was that just without a towel? I was like, I didn't know what it was. And then he was saying, I said, no, you need to wear shorts. He said he had there was more benefit to him not wearing shorts than wearing shorts. And I went, no, it's exactly the same wearing shorts. So I was like, no, you will have to wear shorts if I'm massaging you. And he said, it's fine. I found someone more expensive than you who will do it. And I went, that's fine. I was like, oh, well, what a shame. So I have got away with it, I suppose, be seen as lightly. I've had stalkers as well in the past, but that was more through dating sites. So I don't do dating sites anymore. So yeah, mine's more personal experiences that I've had situations with than through sports massage.
But it's all still suddenly now, from what started off with, oh, Heather, you were so unlucky because there was this one weirdo in your town, it's turned out to, well, no, actually, there's a bigger problem here, as we'll find out with more therapists as well. And we will move on to other therapists with how to react if these things do happen. We'll have some people talking about how to maybe try and limit the chance of this happening in the first place with screening, which some of you touched on already. So look, guys, I want to, sadly, I feel bad. I told you before I was going to have to do this, and it hurts me. My hands are like stuck to my head. Don't move them. But we've got other people waiting in the lobby who are going to share experiences as well. But I do, is there anything else you want to add before we swap you over to other therapists? Or
no, I was just going to pick up on the point that you made about making a joke of it. And that is actually a typical trauma response. We make a joke of something because it makes it seem more normal to us, because it's really hard to actually get your head around what's actually happened. It's hard for us to admit that this has happened and to process it. And, like I've actually had to go through trauma counseling because of what's happened, because it has been so terrifying and it's been really helpful. But, you shouldn't have to do that if you're a professional. You shouldn't have to go through trauma counseling because you've seen a client. These things shouldn't happen. And like, you're going to go on to talk about the things that you can do, but it's just so important, especially for new therapists coming out, to actually consider how they're going to prevent these things, and to take it into consideration as part of their risk assessment as they're setting up their practices. It's really crucial for them.
Yeah, I wanted to say as well that we don't want to put people off doing sports massage. This is more to help people to be aware of what's in the surroundings and what to be aware of when booking in clients as well.
Good point. Really good point. Yeah. Okay. Listen, Heather, Catherine, Becky, thank you so much. I wish I could keep you on for longer, but the idea of tonight is collectively to show the scale of this problem and then start moving on to what we can do about it. I mean, we could go on for ages about why it's there and talk about all of the why so many guys like this, but we want to get some practical advice to people who are listening, thanks to the experience of other therapists like yourself. So thank you, Heather, Catherine and Becky. I'm going to remove you now, much to my disgust, and bring up the other therapists. I'm sorry, I can't believe I'm having to do this. But
I'll be down in the comments again. I'll go down in the comments.
Please do go into the Facebook chat room and continue, okay? So I appreciate your time, eh? So thanks, Heather. Remove. Oh, don't even say remove. Why can't the button say send to a better place? Right, Catherine, thanks so much. And Becky, thank you so much. Chat later on. Right, those of you listening to the podcast, I'm back on the screen by myself now. So yeah, already setting the scene of what is such a serious problem, but we're talking about it, which is great, and we're raising awareness of it. And now we're going to move into more practical elements of how to maybe test it in the first place with screening, and then what to do if it does happen. So we're going to have 3 more therapists coming up who I'm going to bring through now. So I'm going to bring up, let's have a look what we got here. Verity King and Daniel Charner. So Verity coming up, Danielle coming up. Thanks for waiting, you guys, by the way. Is our Janet managed to, behind the scenes, we've had Janet running around, starting her own show, calling people out. I'm sorry, Janet, if you're listening and can't make it. There's been some kind of weird thing going on. So keep trying to get in the lobby if you can, Janet. But in the meantime, let me bring up Fiona, who was supposed to be there in the beginning anyway. Right. Hey, guys. How you doing?
Hi.
Hiya.
Thanks for waiting so patiently. We're already over time, but it's so difficult stopping people when you're talking about things like this. So yeah, let's do the start thing, the same thing. Maybe just introduce yourselves, a little bit about where you are and what you do, and then we'll move on to strategies to avoid it happening in the first place. So yeah, introduce yourselves if you're so kind, in any particular order.
I'll start then. I'm Verity. I've been doing sports massage for 3 years. Previous career involved security. I'm one of the fortunate ones. I've not had any inappropriate incidents. And sadly, I want to say yet, because at some point I'm expecting it. And then I'll just discuss later on sort of the measures I've gone through to basically protect me and prevent anything like that happening. So yeah, that's me.
I'm Danielle. So I'm based in Taunton in Somerset. I've been a massage and sports therapist for about 7-8 years now. Unfortunately, I've had a few minor issues. Nothing as traumatic as Heather's, luckily, but none the same. Still things that shouldn't have happened in our industry.
I'm Fiona, and I am also a sports massage and exercise therapist working in Northamptonshire. And my experiences have not been actually of any similar experiences, have not been in the clinic environment or in my role as a sports massage and exercise therapist. So, but I do have some experiences that have influenced how I operate, and I would say that that's probably why I haven't experienced any issues in the clinic, but also luck, part luck.
Okay, so thanks for joining us, Verity, Danielle and Fiona. So yeah, I want to move on to, I suppose prevention is probably the wrong word. It sickens me and scares me, Verity, to see someone sit there going, it's only a matter of time for what happens. It scares the hell out of me. It makes me so sad that, again, we're living in an age where a female therapist is sitting there thinking, well, I've been lucky so far, it's going to happen. That's like, it makes me feel sick. It really does. But let's talk about things we can put into place, starting maybe with you, Verity, about tactical ways of limiting, minimizing the risk of these experiences.
So I actually, the room behind me is actually a room in my house. So I do work from home, and my husband travels a lot, so I'm on my own a lot. I don't have a booking system on my website. They need to contact me directly, and I weighed up the pros and cons with booking. Someone could just blindly book, and I have not been able to have a discussion with them. I don't know them. So a lot of my clients have come either via recommendations with friends or other clients, or they've emailed me directly. They've had to provide their contact number for me to email me. So then I tend to give them a call. If there's anything in the email, any behaviour or I say language, I had one particular client. They weren't male as far as I know, because I had to do some research on them. They messaged me, and it was one sentence: I want to book in for a sports massage. That's all they gave me. And I said, yeah, that's great. Could I just have your name, please, so I know who I can so that I can refer you to? And they gave me their surname, and that was it. And I thought, this isn't sort of this doesn't feel right. And then as the conversation went on, things were just not adding up to what they were requiring or what they were requesting. I was then giving them options, and then they would sort of almost like shut me down, and then I'd have silence, and then a week later I'd then have a barrage of more messages from them. And on that occasion I actually blocked their number. So in regards to the booking system, I feel like I have more control, that they've got to contact me directly rather than just going on my website and saying, right, I'll just book that slot. You touched on the gut instinct. If there is something that is making you feel uncomfortable, is there a particular way they've written something or they've said something, listen to it. When clients obviously contact me, I will check Facebook. I will look for their profiles, and you'd be surprised how much might be in the public domain about them. And then obviously you can start building up a picture in regards to that. I'll also search their mobile number, because on Facebook, some people have their mobile number which is searchable. They may say that they're of a gender, and I know we're all sort of, there's gender fluidity that's in the forefront at the moment, but that may give you a bit more information as to who you're dealing with, whether they're being truthful in what they're saying. And this is just sort of me talking about this actually sounds pretty awful, that I'm going to these lengths, because we shouldn't have to. But I think when I've got somebody coming into my home and it's my sanctuary, I need to sort of feel that I'm safe in there. When they come into the room, I've got 3 dogs. I lock them in my lounge, but I keep the front door unlocked. That's for the client, like I suppose a comfort thing for the client. If they're not sure of me that the front door is unlocked, they can just leave. That's not a problem. They will follow me up on the first treatment, because they've got to go upstairs. I tend to tuck myself in the corner nearest to the door. Not enough that they feel like they're blocked, because I've got to think of them as well, but near enough if I need to leave, I can go. I've got my phone right behind me. To my left I've got a bookcase, and basically I keep my phone and I keep my keys, and that's directly behind me if I need access to them. I've said on instances where a client, I'm not sure of a client, I've said to my husband and a best friend, if you don't get a text message within 15 minutes after this appointment's finished, can you call me, because something's wrong. So I have gone to those lengths. Other things, one thought that occurred to me today, and it was just from watching an American police program yesterday. They touch the car that they stop. If you are a mobile therapist and you are going to somebody else's house, And this isn't to put anyone off at all. It's just to prove that you had been present in that dwelling or room, touch something, so that your fingerprints are there, should anything happen. Because then that places you at that location should the worst case scenario. And also with mobile, if you're going to somebody's property, Google map it, look at the location, look at the estate, have a look at the front door. Is there anything that's making you feel I'm not too sure about this? Make sure that they do not lock that front door as you enter. Maybe make a joke of it. If they go to lock the front door, that straight away is a warning bell of why you're locking that front door. Make sure you're in a position that you've got a route, an exit route. That's sort of, I mean, completely not in the sports massage world. I had to go with a friend for a meeting with a reverend, and it was alarm bell straight away, and I was looking for the exit room and thinking, right, I'm near to that. They're not in the position to block me. Other things that I've done, leaving my rock blades out on visual. Normally they're in my little case, but if I don't know them, I do leave them out, because they look like knuckle dusters. So it's more of a give an impression. This is a professional vicinity, and even my website, it's not relaxation or anything like that. It's very sort of straight down the line. This is the treatment. These are the techniques that I may or may not use, and sort of I think I'm more. I give off the impression that I'm quite detached, and then it's only after a few treatments that they start to know me, and then I might start opening up to them. And then sort of the last point is, it was a question that was raised just before this, was what point do you talk to the police, the threshold? And in all honesty, if there is something that makes you feel uncomfortable, the police all have an online reporting system, and more often than not, you might think that it's a one-off and you were just unlucky. You aren't. This is repeat behaviour that they will attempt with numerous people until sort of they're banned. They then move on to the next person, and that could be sort of in the public. It could be domestic as well. So nothing is too small to report it, because all that intelligence builds up and can form a profile of somebody. So never think, oh, I don't want to waste the police's time. You're not. Stalking, harassment is at the forefront, unfortunately, after Sarah Everard's murder. So the police it is paramount at the moment. So don't ever sort of question yourself or think, nah, it was just me. It was something I did, or you kind of victimize yourself and try and justify their actions. That's all. Pretty much just report it. And then more often than not, you're not alone in that situation.
Brilliant, amazing list. Thank you so much for that, Verity. And the last point as well, you're not just preventing it for yourself by taking these actions, you're actually preventing it potentially for other people by reporting stuff. So you're actually looking after the whole community, only by letting the police know. That's amazing. Fiona, you said that you think that you've been fortunate up to now because of things you put into place. Does that sound similar to you?
I think
what Verity's been doing, or do you think maybe it's a bit over the top? I wonder whether people are sitting there playing devil's advocate, thinking, "Oh, wow, that's
well,
way
I
over the
think
top."
I'm quite impressed at Verity. Sound like you've done a lot of research, and your preparation and consideration. A lot of people might be listening and thinking, "Wow, that's awfully detailed," and maybe it's perhaps a bit out of nowhere, really, to start considering these things if you don't have any previous exposure to it, an experience of unwanted attention or I suppose aggressive behaviour, and it's very easy to tar one gender with the brush, but like you say, there's a whole host of considerations that, you know, really could influence how you feel about your level of risk. I think that it's really important to know what's available to help, and everybody's going to feel differently. My precautions that I've taken, I'm actually currently not practicing in an in-person clinic at the moment. I've kind of just put it on the back burner and working virtually because of COVID. But I did have a kind of alarm bells ringing kind of situation a few months before we went into lockdown that made me reconsider one of my locations. And just, I think that they're reminders, I suppose, of what the possibilities are when you're jolted like that. You kind of think, oh, okay, maybe I do need to kind of put in an extra measure here, or consider my safety or the safety of the client. I've been quite lucky. I mean, I'm not saying that my height really helps, but I do think being 6 foot kind of helps put people off, you know. And I've never really had. I would say that I've been quite. I really don't want to use the word lucky, but I do think that helps. That's in my favour, perhaps. But putting myself into gyms and environments where I know there are people around and I get to know the people there has really been something that I've been very certain that I wanted to do. And I wouldn't choose to work from my own home or in a premises that only I work from. And I think that it's very individual, but it is something that from a professional level, I think if we're all seen to be singing from the same hymn sheet in terms of screening people and having protocols and processes that send out the clear message of the work we do, the nature of the work we do, then it would hopefully put people off even bothering, because they just won't see a way in. Unfortunately, I think that being female does draw attention from certain types of people, but you know, sometimes it's people that you don't think are a risk and more likely to equally, you know. And I'm smiling and I'm laughing, but it's really not funny. And you can really misjudge people too. So I would say that if you ever have a feeling, like a gut instinct, that something isn't right, you know, you should never feel bad about that. And don't second guess yourself. It's better to be safe than sorry. I do think actually the mention of Sarah Everard is possibly triggering maybe slightly controversial thoughts. Like I think that the reaction of the police to put the onus on women as victims or potential victims is quite a difficult thing to react to, because it's obviously a cultural issue as well, and we need to educate people, and it's a societal issue that we really also have to address. And you know, why should we be having to spend the extra money on CCTV and whatever just for peace of mind, when actually the work needs to be done by all of us, really. You know, it's a big picture kind of thing.
Definitely, yeah. There's a whole nother debate, isn't it, on why should anyone have to worry about their safety, and you know, why can't we just remove this ridiculous kind of behavior? But yeah, as far as screening goes, Danielle, what have you got put in place compared to Fiona and Verity here?
Somewhere in the middle, I guess. I'm lucky that I work within a clinic environment, so there's a team of us there, so rarely we're alone. I think COVID has helped us out, actually. Our pre-screening has increased. We've also got more security measures. It used to be that we could be working on our own upstairs and the front door's unlocked. We don't have that now. We have a proper security system. It was something I always felt quite uneasy about. I never felt very safe in the environment. So I certainly feel better now we've increased our security, but it's that feeling we shouldn't have to feel as uneasy as we do. Completely agree with the gut feeling thing. It's something you learn as the years go by, I guess, but it's so important to trust it. I think my gut feeling's been right nearly every single time, and if I've not felt comfortable, I've now gained that confidence to be able to refuse treatment. But it is hard, especially when you're starting out, to know how to deal with it.
That trust your instincts thing. Just a shout out to Sue Richards, who sadly couldn't join us tonight, but she contributed hugely in the group and gave some advice. For people who don't know Sue, we'll have to make sure we get on the show. Maybe we'll get some experts on. Sue was a PE instructor / prison officer, and she working in female and male jails. And in fact, when she worked in a male jail, she was the only female in the PE department. So she was taking classes of male inmates on her own. So she has been in some pretty kind of hostile environments and trained a lot. And her biggest takeaway from doing that work and staying safe was trust your instincts, listen to it. So I do wonder whether part of the problem maybe is people ignoring the little voice inside, thinking, oh, I'm just overreacting. Is that something all of you is possible? Is that the case? You dismiss it thinking, oh, I'm just going over the top.
I think so. I think maybe you question whether it's only happened to you. I think this podcast is amazing because actually it's opened up how common it is, which as much as it's really sad, is actually reassuring to know it's not just you. It's not people that have picked you out. I would completely agree. It's,
Listen to the little voice in your head. Fiona and Verity, have you got any tips for people who don't listen to the voice in their head? People who just dismiss it and think, I'm going over the top. I mean, can you go over the top? Could you be paranoid and just end up driving yourself mad?
I'd say sort of I'm on the extreme scale of screening, but I suppose that's because of my background. But I think you need to be in a thought process of, is this client, do I enjoy treating this client, and do I look forward to treating them? Because if you don't and you dread it, why are they on your books? And I know there's people out there who aren't they're in a position that actually this client pays for something, but if you're in that situation that you're dreading it, it destroys any enjoyment out of your job role. And I know with client confidentiality, obviously we can't discuss things, say, with a husband or a wife. But I think it's a difficult one. If there was something, it's a difficult one. If there was something that was mentioned in that, and you're just like, really, was that appropriate? And or even in STA, sort of coming on the STA group, or just messaging STA and saying, I had this client, and certainly for the neurotherapists, I had this client that sort of said this or did this. Is this normal? Is this right? It may highlight that actually, no, it's not. And it may give confidence to that person to start identifying where things may not be going right.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, guys, I'm sorry, but we've come to that time again where I need to kind of just chuck you out. Got other people queuing up, wait again. But I'm so sorry about that, but I really appreciate your time, Verity and Danielle and Fiona. Well, we're going to have a little chat about that in the next section, I think. I mean, all of you have kind of said in your own way, don't let us put you off, but be on guard as well. So we'll develop that in the next section. Thank you, Verity, Danielle, Fiona, so much for giving up your time. Do join the Facebook group and continue input. There's loads of stuff going on in the comment section, which is lovely. Thanks, guys, for having a little discussion in there at the same time. Take this opportunity to talk, because that seems to be the common theme, isn't it? Talk with somebody else if you're worried about something, get advice. Don't just trap it inside your body and have this internal dialogue. So thanks, guys. I'm going to move you out if that's all right. So thanks, Verity. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks, Fiona. And thanks, Danielle. Boom, here I am all by my Todd again. Right, so so much food for thought. And again, I'm so sorry that I had to get rid of them for now. But we have more people coming up onto the screen who are waiting patiently here. Let's see. Right. Just checking who's down there. Okay, so we're going to bring up Emma Wardle, who's been waiting patiently. Hey Emma, how you doing?
Hiya.
We'll bring up some Anne Cochrane. Thank you very much. That can come up there. And Sharon Headley as well. There we go. 1, 2, 3. There we are. All right, I'm maximum ready. Hi guys, how you doing? Thank you for waiting.
Hi, fine, thanks.
Hiya.
So I'll give you a chance just to introduce yourself, say where you are, where you're from, and that whole kind of thing. And but then I want this section, if possible, to kind of be a chat about how to react if something happens. Now, I could have asked any of you people who have come and so kind to share your time to talk about that, but that's kind of the theme I want to address now. We've done everything we can to prevent it. Bam, it's happened. What do we do? How do we deal with it? So before we do that, though, would you be so kind to introduce yourself? Let people who are listening know who you are, where you're from, in any order.
Okay, I'll go first then. It's Anne Cochrane here. So great to be able to join us tonight, and amazing conversations that we've had on the chats in the background of all this meeting. So I'm based down in Kent, in Canterbury in Kent, despite my Scottish accent. I'm in the southern side and in the southeast along with Emma. I actually work from home and I live at home alone as well. So just a different angle from what we've been talking about earlier. But I've had a number of different scenarios, both from the initial phone calls, so the importance of all the screening component is really, as Verity was saying earlier, is the key thing for me as well, but also thinking about our own personal risk assessment and how we go about that with just looking at our own businesses as well. So I'll come back to some of that a bit later.
Thanks, Anne.
Okay, do you want me to go next? So my name's Sharon Headley. I am part of the event STA team, so I organise lots of massage events. But my past is that I worked in adult mental health, locked wards, again very similar to one of our other colleagues, and worked a lot of lone working. So I think that gave me a bit of an idea of how to screen. And I do believe, even with friends that are thinking of like smutty jokes to do with sports massage, I stopped that quite quickly. Not, and I will say I'm not really comfortable with that, and walk away from the situation. I think sometimes, we have to think about those risk assessments and what we're comfortable with and what we're not. So obviously we'll come on to discuss that in a bit.
Last but not least, you've got no choice now, Emma.
Just being polite. So I'm Emma Wardle. I'm one of the regional reps for the southeast of England. I've been in the industry for about 8 years now as a sports therapist. I've kind of worked, just sort of a bit of background, I've worked in from kind of rugby teams to 2 clinics, and probably for the last 3-4 years, maybe even 5 actually now, I've been just working solely for myself. So I run my own clinic, and all of these have been at actually 3 different locations. I've just recently moved, so we're actually in the middle of a garage conversion for a clinic, which will obviously be separate from the house and have a separate entrance. But it's definitely interesting thinking about maybe when I've had some of the experiences. So I've had one, actually one was at university, we'll come back to that, and then I would say actually when I've been at both of my clinics, and there's been lots of other people around, it's been kind of a gym, worked with alongside physios, don't think I've actually had any experiences working in somewhere where there's a lot of other people, and then probably my other 2 or 3 experiences have always been actually when I've been working solely by myself. I hadn't actually thought about that in great detail until now, but it's quite interesting to think about in which situations things have occurred. Obviously shouldn't be happening in any situation, but yeah, it's interesting if you've got other people around you and obviously other therapists, and you're working somewhere that's quite, you've got a reception and other people around. I think it obviously deters some of the issues that you would get.
Before we go on to dealing with when something's happened, just could you go in a little bit more detail? Because I think one of the take-home messages from this episode is going to be how common these episodes are and how they can happen just like that. So what have you, was it mainly in rugby, did you say, Emma, where you've had situations?
No, so rugby's actually been fine. I haven't, normally most of the boys are pretty, respectful. There'll be a level of banter, which you've got to try and find your own line and what's appropriate and what's not. For people who've worked at rugby clubs, they'll probably understand that. My first experience was in uni, actually, so really, really early on. I think I was, I don't know if I was first year or second year, but basically the university that I was at had a clinic in the university kind of for students to do placements, and they'd have a supervisor there. They'd have kind of 3 or 4 rooms, and they invited people. So I was actually based in Luton, and then they invited kind of, general public to actually come into the clinic, and obviously we'd be doing our assessments and things like that. And one of my experiences was with a male who'd come in, and actually thinking back on this, even though I was kind of young and starting out, I think I still felt quite confident in the situation, just because there was someone right outside the door supervising. So he was actually a foreign male. He didn't speak that good at English, but I think he probably understood more than he was actually letting on. I think he used that as a bit of a not understanding things. And he was kind of sexually inappropriate and wanted me to, touch areas, and kind of, I think, was thinking it was a different type of massage place. And he proceeded to say a few things, and I sort of said, this is not what we do here. We're strictly professional sports massage, made it quite clear. And then when he carried on, I just, because I think he was face down on the couch, so I just stepped out of the room and went to the supervisor and said that this has happened. And then she took over from there. So I think she was I can't remember if she was a teaching assistant or something, but she then went in, brought the male guy out. They had a conversation, and he was banned from the clinic, so he wasn't allowed to come back. So in that situation, I felt quite safe, because it was at university, there was other people around. So yeah, that one was quite. I kind of felt, even though I was young, I wasn't worried that I was on my own, or I wasn't going to be able to get out of the room. I kind of felt like I was sort of in control of the situation as much as you can be.
Yeah, it's no credit to you. You just seemed to deal with it straight away and made it clear. Is that down to your personality, do you think? And feel free to come in, Anne and Sharon, but I can imagine other people. I mean, I can imagine myself a bit younger, just kind of either freezing or not knowing what to say, or, do you think a few people wouldn't be able to react as clearly and cleanly as you did, or had you had training already to deal with that? If this happens, just say that's not what we do here and report it.
Yeah, no, from what I remember, no training from university, but I think the supervisor had said, because it obviously wasn't just, this could have happened with another student as well. It was open to kind of non-sports therapy people, anyone else in the university. So it could have been a student, but I think because they were aware that they'd open the clinic up to the general public, I think they had said to us, I think they'd given us a bit of a briefing. If anything's, you're not happy with anything, if things aren't comfortable, if you need us, like, we knew there's literally someone who sat on a desk outside the rooms. So not really much training. I kind of remember that incident quite vaguely, and I would say probably as I've got older, that was quite a long time ago now, but I've definitely got more confident with stuff. I'm quite bold, and I wouldn't say a fiery personality, but I will stand up for myself, and I think that's kind of just grown as I've been working on my own. Normally I'll have someone like my other half at home, and over COVID, obviously, when we have been able to work, he's been working from home the whole time, and most of my clinics have sort of been separate-ish. But again, all the time, I actually think being in your own home, I think you've probably got a little bit more of an advantage than if you're being mobile and going, obviously, you know, kind of where the rooms are, where the exits are. Obviously, having someone else around is really key. Whereas I think I used to do mobile as well, and I used to do, you know, used to be traveling around late at night till 9 o'clock at night in the dark. And I actually don't think at the time, I don't think I really thought about that too much, because I used to, again, be a carer before that. So I also used to be going out to clients' homes doing similar things. But again, I remember when I was a carer, they give you a rape alarm, which obviously I actually still have, but I haven't obviously had to use it.
Okay, so yeah, speaking directly, laying the law down straight away. And you do work, did you say, by yourself at home, no one else around, no supervisor sitting downstairs at a desk?
No.
How have you managed to, have you ever had anything happening where you've had to deal with it on the spot?
Yeah, I have had a few things over the years. I've run my business for 4 years from home now, and yeah, I do live alone. So I think I've spoken in the chat about sometimes, especially with a new client, first client, I have the imaginary friend in the lounge that you just pretend that there's someone else there. So obviously they don't know any different. The TV might be on or something. So there's some small things that you can do in that scenario, and I very much focus on that safeguarding of myself. You know, it is my own home, it's my own space, and so you've got to look after yourself. So one, yeah, I am a judo trained, so physically there's nobody needs to mess and they'll be out the door, but on, you know, the other side of it is a case of, you know, that self-respect, and that you're not going to allow for anybody to kind of cross that line, you know, in your business, in your home, or wherever you are. Actually, as women, we just, you know, let's have our own rules, and that's what, you know, is followed. But it doesn't necessarily always happen in the first treatment session as well. I had a scenario where I had a client who I'd seen them for 3 appointments. But as each appointment occurred, there was always little things being added in or requested, you know, that were getting borderline. And to the extent that then in this third session with this client, halfway through treatment, and they said, oh, you do realise that you could earn a lot more money if you did additional services. So right bang in the middle of, you know, a treatment session. So in my case, I just said, well, that's not, you know, part of what services I offer, and just was very blunt and clear about, you know, the expectations of the session. And I said, you know, we've actually only got a few minutes left of, well, about 10 minutes left of the session. I says, based on that conversation, I closed the treatment. I stopped the treatment session there and then, just to really make clear that it wasn't acceptable. And that particular client has obviously tried to request further appointments, and funnily, I've been a bit busy. So I just don't want that type of person in my clinic, in my treatment room, in my home. And so, you know, there's a very blank line there. But we think that it's, you know, these are probably more, not necessarily always this. I do a mixture of, I'll do sports therapy and other treatments, as well as doing oncology, cancer work as well. So, but what I've found is actually the biggest area of problem has been the more professional athlete clients who seem to think it's acceptable. You know, even though you've gone through I do a screening, very detailed screening, collect all their details, arrange a time to call back, and obviously walk through the expectations, and you know, work through what it is their needs are, and you know, almost like do that initial proposal of an initial consultation treatment plan. Also, until I see them physically, obviously you don't do a lot of that, but that initial kind of component. So yeah, it's yeah, there's the ones that we think it might be okay with actually can go that path as well. So that's where it's very setting the clear expectations of, you know, like I used a quote in our earlier chats about what to wear, what not to wear, but some of them choose not to follow it, even though you've explicitly gone through these deals. So it is, unfortunately, I feel it is just a case of being strong, stand our ground, and you'd be very clear of what's acceptable and what's not. Sadly, it happens.
Yeah. So yeah, we've got a common theme here. It seems of nipping it in the bud, not letting it escalate, not thinking, oh, they're just recognizing. I think Becky actually mentioned in the comments that sometimes working, for example, in a rugby club, or kind of like if it's a male rugby club, you get to be able to have a bit of radar for banter and something a bit kind of like this isn't right. It's easier to tell. So that's an interesting point there, Becky. And I think Fiona mentioned, Dr. Fiona Higgs said when she was on here before that, you can't, I think it was Fiona, you can't always judge a book by its cover. Sometimes they might seem, it's so hard. The fact that it's like the third or fourth treatment where you think you've worked up a relationship with someone, they're paying you money, it's all going well. And then bam, suddenly the sheep's clothing comes off and it's like, shocking. Ugh. Anyway, Sharon, nipping it in the bud. Is it something you've had to do?
Yes, it is. There's been several times when I've needed to nip it in the bud. So having worked in football and that area, sort of like with young, so I've worked in the academies, football academies. So there's sometimes been a bit of banter between parents while waiting to get their sons treated. Nipped it in the bud then and just kind of like said, that's not appropriate here. With the younger ones and the actual footballers, are very much again, I'm not a masseuse, I'm a sports therapist, I do sports massage, making those boundaries really clear and letting them know exactly what is acceptable and what's not. Like you say, you can tell when there's a bit of banter and a bit of silliness, but I think the sooner you nip it in the bud, the better it is. Having that clear boundary, this is what I am a professional, and just making that really clear to them from the beginning. For my own business, I'm very clear of, so my target audience or my target client is female 40, rather than, I don't put in for male 40, I put female 40, professional, possibly with family, that kind of thing. That's my target client, and I think that's quite important as well. So putting those, so maybe using on your Facebook page, frequently asked questions. What should I wear? T-shirt, shorts, vest, top, shorts, that kind of thing. So making sure that you've got those things down. So if somebody's looking through, it's all very clear. What they want to wear. But it's also, just making sure you're safe around that environment. So I do, or did do, up until COVID, I have an annex just sort of like a few steps away from my actual house, and work there alone. But they wouldn't have known whether there was somebody in the house here or not. They wouldn't have known if there was intercom or anything else. So I would say, somebody's at home, somebody's just across the way, or, my next client that sits and waits in the car or comes and knocks on the door kind of thing. But I must admit, the pre-screening that I did and would still do is very much, making sure I've got a name, telephone number, where they live, and how they've got to me in the first place. Is it word of mouth, or how they've got to me? How did they know me? And I might even ring up, a client and say, "Oh, have you sent somebody to me?" And they go, "Oh yes, I sent so and so to you. I was in the golf club and I told them about you." So I know where they've come from. So the only cold calls I've had are people that have asked for extras. So apart from needles and a bit of tape, there's no extras in my job, and I've cut them down. I've blocked them straight away.
I'm wondering whether there's a common theme. Sadly, well, there's only 3 of you on the screen. I could have put this to any of the other, or people are listening on live as well. But it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in most of these circumstances that I've heard about, it's more a gradual process, as if the client is testing the water, maybe with a comment, maybe with letting the towel slip off. Oh, I made a mistake, rather than actual straight in with some kind of like handling or abuse that way. Is that kind of the theme? Or do you know of anybody who's actually been in a position where there's been none of this banter, or they've just literally just grabbed out inappropriately?
I think pretty much all of mine have been quite gradual, or comments. I wouldn't say I've had, most of mine have actually been, again, I've had someone who I saw for one session, and he was actually linked with the rugby club that I used to work for. So I thought, you know, that'd be fine. I think he was new there. And he kind of already gave me some behavioural issues that he had. He kind of, and I kind of, in the back of my head, I was thinking, okay, well, for example, he'd said something like ADHD, and I was thinking that's fine, but that doesn't excuse, obviously, kind of things said and things like that. So he actually, I never saw him for a second session, because he ended up kind of, you know, I think for me, I didn't think it was that subtle, but some people might look at it and think it was quite subtle what he kind of said. And I just said, you know, you've made it clear that you're going to find a male therapist, and whether that's because you're insinuating other things. There was other stuff of like just questioning what I was charging and this and that, and I just thought, you know, I'm not gonna, and I sort of just wrote him a message. But again, this was over kind of over message as well. So over text message, and I probably had more experiences with shutting stuff down over technology rather than in person. I think it gets very, again, for me, I think I've been able to handle it because I've been a little bit back from the situation. I think if something happened actually while someone was on the couch, or, you know, if it was, you know, if they said something, I could probably say, okay.
Oh, we
just lost Emma. But yeah, I can say with them, I've had a couple instances in the actual coach scenario as well, which have just closed off, and I guess just been strong at the time, and just said it wasn't acceptable and asked them to leave. But I have cut off an awful lot of others that were going down that path, as Emma was saying, with the phone calls, text messages, and you just have to ask the right questions, and you know, they've never got to the door type of thing. So, but there's been quite a number, and it goes through phases. I haven't had any for ages, and then you get a little flurry of them. So the businessmen on their way to the city for a meeting want to stop in on the way home, or you know, the one that says, oh, can I do a late appointment and I'll bring a bottle of wine. You know, the things that you get in that way, you know, just right away are the ones that you're just not going to let across the doorstep.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Right, look, we're past. So, yeah, take home messages. It does seem to be, yeah, listen to your inner self, your voice warning you, cutting it, nipping the bud. Don't let it escalate. Don't think that you're overreacting. It's a preventative thing, which sounds great. I think Emma has just managed to join. There we go. So, Emma, you lost us. We were worried about
guys,
you.
that was
You're
really awful timing. That was laptop issue. I thought, no.
We're rounding it up anyway. So yeah. We're going, as I said in the beginning, if anybody watching this has been affected by it and need to chat or need some support or report or whatever it is, Sharon, we've organised, haven't we, an email, a way of contacting?
Yeah, so we've decided to use our events at Thesta. I'll put it in the comments in the .co.uk. So it's an STA one. So we're using that rather than my own personal one. If we feel then that we need to get a specific one that is just for us to be able to support, we'll do that. And obviously the details will come out. We'll put it on the Facebook page, and obviously we'll forward all the messages to that. So that Gary's already put it up on there, so that's fantastic.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, so it'll be.
And so at the moment, obviously, we're not doing any events at the moment, so it will be there's myself and I think Gary. We will both be replying to that, and you know, we're here to talk and support and to look after you. But I think very much risk assessments is definitely something that you need to do. As much as you would do a fire safety risk assessment, I think you need to think about, you know, making sure that you know your way out of a building, whether it's for a fire or whether it's, you know, for your own personal support. And the Holly Guard is something as well that maybe you can put on your phones, because if you shake your phone, it will sound an alarm. A police officer told me, you never shout rape or anything like that, always shout fire. You will get help with fire rather than, you know, anything else. And that's, unfortunately, that's society of today, but some people don't want to get involved. But, you know, that was my advice that was given to me a long time ago. And, you know, it helps.
Sad truth, isn't it? So there we go. Yeah, and just talk. One of the common things sitting back and listening to you all has been this kind of thing of it's a horrible world out there, but it's nice to know I'm not alone, that I'm not imagining it, that I'm not overreacting. That seems to be a common theme in the experience you get. So if anyone is out there and they're thinking, oh my God, this thing happened to me, you probably do want to talk it through, and there'll be people who can give you advice. And Gary's already put in the comments, so I'll read it out because it kind of sums it up really. Gary said, thank you to everyone who has joined us as a guest this evening. I'm saddened by the prevalence of incidents and vow to do everything we can from the STA to raise awareness and create a support network so these incidents can be discussed in a safe environment and appropriate guidance given. Gary goes on to say, we are developing our resources packs, which go to every new member and will be made available to every member ASAP. So there we go. Right. Thank you so much, everybody who's joined us. Apologies to, I can still see speakers there down in the lobby who I just want to bring up now and just say thank you face to face, but I can't do it because it just won't happen. So my thanks to everyone who has joined us tonight. Again, just to reiterate, if you need to talk to someone, events@thesta.co.uk, or obviously if you want to reach out to any of the speakers here, there's me saying, yeah, just contact the speakers, they'll be fine with it. But I'm pretty sure that they're all okay. If you feel there's somebody who you can identify with, then yeah, check them out, and I'm sure they won't mind you contacting them. They might put you through some screening first of all to check who you are, but do reach out to them.
Can I add one last thing?
Sorry.
What was that?
I was gonna add one last thing that I think,
go for it.
I think it was Heather's just put in the chat, which I think is really important. Obviously, we're talking about all of our bad experiences, but obviously the majority of my clients are lovely, and obviously we all have to think about this, but also to maybe newer therapists. We don't want to put people off and scare people so much that this is gonna, you know, happen. It's just trying to make it aware and having some precautions but yeah, the majority of my clients are lovely.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree. I'm the same. It's like, you know, the odd occurrence. So
yeah, the odd occurrence, but they shouldn't happen.
No, wipe it out.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Thank you for that, Heather. Thanks for reminding us. Yeah, it's a bit like Crime Watch, isn't it? You know, be vigilant, but don't be afraid and think that every single client is a wolf at the door. Right, brilliant. Thanks for that, Heather. So next week we will be joined by guest Liam Richardson, who is head of content at Therapy Expo. So Liam is going to be talking us obviously about Therapy Expo coming up November 25th and 6th, I think. And he's going to be particularly focusing on the putting together an event, obviously post-COVID. We're not out of the war yet. It's still very much on people's minds. There's still people who are frightened by it. So yeah, Liam's going to be talking all about Therapy Expo, but also about precautions being put into place to deal with the fact that we're still kind of in a pandemic. That'll be next Tuesday at 8 o'clock, as always, either on the YouTube channel if you want to join us live, or Sports Therapy Association Facebook page. Right, I think that's it, people. Thank you so much, everybody who's joined us, and Anne and Sharon and Emma, who've been the last faces on the screen that you'll be able to see. I don't want to have the last word. Let one of you sign us off with something wise, and I don't want to close out with a male voice. I don't feel like I've got the right. It's put me in my place. One of you close out for tonight. What are you going to say? And I'm just going to stop it.
I would definitely say keep talking. You know, we're here for support. Keep talking. You know, everyone. you know, just make sure that if any concerns that you talk to somebody that will listen. And I'm hoping that tonight, you know, we'll bring a few more people forward that we can help and support. And, you know, well done for everyone coming forward tonight.
I can say good night all, can I? Yeah. Good night all. That's great. Thanks for joining us.